Hey there, Ruth Haven Grounds family. Today we're tackling something that surprises a lot of gardeners, growing sweet corn in containers. I know what you're thinking. Corn? In a pot? But trust me, once you bite into that first ear of sweet, juicy corn you grew on your balcony or patio, you'll understand why this is one of my favorite container gardening adventures. Let me be straight with you, corn isn't the easiest container crop, but it's absolutely doable when you understand what the plant needs. I've grown corn in containers for years now, and while I've had my share of learning moments, translation failures, I've cracked the code on producing beautiful ears without a traditional garden bed. So grab your favorite gardening gloves, and let's dive into everything you need to know about container corn. Choosing the right corn variety for container growing is super important. Not all corn varieties are created equal when it comes to container life, and honestly, this is where many gardeners stumble right out of the gate. You want to look for dwarf or short-season varieties that won't tower over your space like they're auditioning for a beanstalk role. My go-to varieties include Media Group, packets of dwarf or short-season corn varieties, close-up of short corn plants growing in containers, Stocka Distribute. Equally, Golden Bantam, which grows to about 4 to 5 feet tall and produces delicious 8-inch ears. Chire's Baby Sweet is another winner, staying compact at around 3 to 4 feet. Trinity is fantastic for containers too, maturing quickly and staying manageable in size. Whatever variety you choose, read that seed packet carefully and look for anything described as dwarf, patio, or compact. Here's something critical that took me a season to learn. Avoid those tempting super sweet hybrid varieties that take 90 days or more to mature. In containers, you want varieties that mature in 60 to 70 days. The plant will be under more stress than its in-ground cousins, so shorter maturity times mean better success rates. Selecting your container and preparing the perfect growing medium is key. Size matters tremendously when growing corn in containers, and this is where you really cannot afford to skimp. Each corn plant needs at least 2 to 3 gallons of soil, but honestly, I recommend going bigger if possible. I use containers that are at least 5 gallons per plant, and, well, bigger is always better with corn. The ideal container should be at least 12 inches deep and equally wide. I've had excellent results with those large fabric grow bags, whiskey barrel planters, and even repurposed storage totes with drainage holes drilled in the bottom. Whatever you choose, drainage is non-negotiable. Corn likes consistent moisture but will absolutely rot if sitting in waterlogged soil. For soil, forget that cheap stuff from the big box store. Corn is a heavy feeder, and you need a nutrient-rich potting mix right from the start. I mix my own blend using equal parts quality potting soil, compost, and coconut coir, then add a slow-release organic fertilizer into the mix. Some gardeners add perlite for drainage, but I find that with fabric containers, the drainage is usually adequate without it. The goal is soil that holds moisture well, but drains excess water quickly. Planting strategy, the block method adapted for containers, is really where container corn growing gets interesting. Corn is wind-pollinated, which means you need multiple plants close together for proper pollination and full ears. In the ground, we plant corn in blocks rather than rows, and you need to adapt this principle for containers. I plant at least 4 plants per large container, spacing them about 6 inches apart in a square pattern. If you're using smaller containers, group at least 4 to 6 containers together so the pollen can drift between plants. This clustering is absolutely essential. I cannot stress this enough. A single corn plant sitting alone will give you sad, partially filled ears that'll break your heart. When planting, sow seeds about 1 to 1.5 inches deep. I usually plant 2 seeds per spot and thin to the strongest seedling once they're a few inches tall. Corn doesn't transplant particularly well, so direct seeding is your best bet. The soil temperature should be at least 60 degrees Fahrenheit, ideally closer to 70. I'm impatient and often start too early, but cold soil leads to poor germination and rotting seeds. Watering container corn is a delicate dance, and getting it right makes the difference between success and disappointment. Corn needs consistent moisture, especially during tasseling and ear development, but it doesn't want wet feet. In the heat of summer, you'll likely need to water daily, and honestly, maybe even twice daily during extreme heat. I check my containers every morning by sticking my finger about 2 inches into the soil. If it's dry at that depth, it's watering time. Container soil dries out much faster than garden beds, so don't assume yesterday's watering is still sufficient. Here's a pro tip. Mulch the top of your container with an inch or two of straw or shredded leaves. This helps retain moisture dramatically and keeps the soil temperature more stable. During that critical period when the tassels appear and the silks emerge, consistent watering is absolutely crucial. Stress during pollination means poorly filled ears. Corn earned its reputation as a heavy feeder, and in containers, this characteristic becomes even more pronounced. The limited soil volume means nutrients get depleted quickly, so you need a solid fertilization plan. I start feeding about 3 weeks after germination with a balanced organic fertilizer. Once the plants are knee-high, I switch to a fertilizer higher in nitrogen to support that rapid growth phase. I use fish emulsion or liquid kelp every 2 weeks, following the package directions, but, sometimes going slightly stronger as the plants mature. When the tassels start forming, I add a dose of compost tea or switch to a fertilizer with more phosphorus to support ear development. Side dressing with compost midway through the growing season gives a nice nutrient boost too. Some gardeners swear by Epsom salts for the magnesium, and I'll occasionally dissolve a tablespoon in a gallon of water for an extra treat. Corn in containers is top-heavy, and a strong wind can topple your whole setup. I learned this the hard way during a summer thunderstorm that left my corn plants sprawled across the patio like they'd had too much to drink. Place your containers in a location that gets some wind protection if possible. Against a wall or fence is ideal. For taller varieties or exposed locations, I stake each plant individually or use tomato cages around the perimeter of the container. It looks a bit funny, but it keeps everything upright. Hilling soil up around the base of the stalks as they grow also helps with stability. Those aerial roots that form along the lower stalk will grab into the mounded soil and provide extra anchorage. Even with proper plant spacing, sometimes container corn needs a pollination assist. When the tassels at the top of the plant start shedding pollen, you'll see yellow dust, and the silks emerge from the developing ears. It's showtime. I gently shake the tassels each morning to help distribute pollen. You can also collect pollen in a paper bag by bending a tassel over and tapping it, then sprinkle this collected pollen directly onto the silks. Each silk connects to a kernel, so good pollination means full, plump ears. Patience during harvest time is tough, but necessary. Corn is ready when the silks turn brown and dry, usually about 20 days after they first appear. To test for ripeness, peel back a small section of husk and pierce a kernel with your fingernail. If milky liquid squirts out, it's perfect. Clear liquid means wait a few more days. Doughy kernels mean you've waited too long. Harvest in the early morning when sugar content is highest, and get those ears cooking or into the refrigerator quickly. Fresh corn's sugars start converting to starch immediately after picking, so time really matters. Growing sweet corn in containers isn't conventional, but it's incredibly rewarding. Yes, it requires attention to watering and feeding, and your yields won't match a farm field, but the flavor and satisfaction of growing your own corn in limited space is unbeatable. If you found this guide helpful, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button on Ruth Haven Grounds. Share this with your gardening friends who think corn is impossible without acres of land. Let's prove them wrong together. Drop a comment below about your own container corn experiences, and let's keep this conversation growing. Happy gardening, everyone.